In 1984, a 12-year-old girl mysteriously disappeared. With no clear clues to help the search, the police offered a $20,000 reward for information related to the disappearance. They then asked for help from the FBI, but the investigation made no progress. The police were so stumped that a program called Girl on the Milk Carton was established. Accordingly, the missing girl's image and information were printed on milk cartons to spread widely across the United States, in the hope that she could find her way home or someone would provide useful clues to the police. This was also the first missing child case mentioned by President Ronald Reagan in his speech on March 7, 1985. Many years later, a Republican politician and gubernatorial candidate was arrested for murdering and hiding the girl's body. Jonelle Matthews, a 12-year-old girl, vanished from her home in 1984, and it wasn't until 35 years later that her remains were discovered by road workers about 15 miles away from her house. Jonelle was born in 1972 and was adopted by Jim and Gloria Matthews when she was just 6 weeks old. She lived with her family in Greeley, Colorado. On the evening of December 20, 1984, Jonelle performed with her school choir at a Christmas concert. That night, Gloria had to leave home to care for a sick relative, and Jim went to watch his older daughter's basketball game. After the performance, Jonelle got a ride home from her friend's father, arriving at 8:15 p.m. By 8:30 p.m., Jonelle answered a phone call and left a message for her father. This phone call was the last time anyone spoke to her. Jim returned home at 9:30 p.m. to find the garage door open, the lights and TV still on, but no one inside. Jonelle's socks and scarf were near the fireplace in the living room, where she usually sat. Her sister arrived home at 10 p.m. and also had no idea where Jonelle could be. Worried, Jim called the police. Police found shoe prints in the snow, indicating that someone had been watching the house through the window and walking around outside. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle. With the snow on the ground, Jim thought it would be difficult for Jonelle to go far without wearing shoes. The Greeley police couldn't find any valuable clues at the scene. In the weeks following Jonelle's disappearance, they secretly monitored Jonelle's biological mother, suspecting she might want to reclaim her child. However, they found that she was unaware of the situation and didn't even know where Jonelle was living. At a dead end, Greeley police offered a $20,000 reward and then sought help from the FBI, but the investigation made no progress. As leads dried up, community continued to search, distributing flyers to 4,000 stores to ensure Jonelle wouldn't be forgotten. Their relentless efforts caught the attention of the White House, with President Ronald Reagan mentioning Jonelle in a speech on March 7, 1985, supporting a national campaign to print images of missing children on milk cartons. Jonelle was also mentioned in the congressional record of the U.S. House of Representatives on April 2, 1985. Jonelle was one of the first missing children to have her photo and information printed on milk carton, spreading awareness nationwide in the hope that she might find her way home, or someone might provide a clue to the police. Jonelle remained missing until 1994, a decade after her disappearance, when authorities declared her deceased. In 2018, a detective who was a former classmate of Jonelle's sister was assigned to resolve the cold case, vowing to uncover the truth. Greeley police reconnected with witnesses and applied the latest forensic science advancements to the investigation. At this time, a woman named Angela Hicks came forward to share her story. She said she had lived for decades with dark suspicions, enduring silence and fear. Angela revealed that her ex-husband, 67-year-old Stephen Pankey, had exhibited behavior that led her to believe he was involved in Jonelle's disappearance. In 1984, the couple lived about 3 miles from the Matthews home. Stephen had also been a minister at the church the Matthews family attended. Angela stated that they left town on December 22, 1984, 2 days after Jonelle's disappearance, to spend Christmas with relatives in California, a trip that was unplanned. On their way back to Greeley on December 26, she noticed Stephen's unusual interest in the case. As he searched for news about Jonelle on the radio, stopped at a grocery store to pick up newspapers with articles about her from a few days earlier, and then had Angela read them to him in the car. Soon after returning home, Stephen began digging in their backyard. Around that time, a car in their garage mysteriously caught fire and was abandoned in a lot. Months after Jonelle's disappearance, Stephen attended church, where he heard a pastor declare that Jonelle would be found safe. Angela claimed to have overheard her husband muttering in response, calling the pastor a false prophet. In 2008, Stephen's son was murdered. At the funeral, Angela heard Stephen say, "I hope God didn't let this happen because of Jonelle Matthews." Police noted that Stephen had long been on their radar due to his odd behavior and obsessive interest in the case. As early as 1999, he had inserted himself into the investigation, repeatedly claiming to know about the crime and offering deals with law enforcement for immunity in exchange for information. He even wrote letters to the police, detailing his alibi and stating that he knew about the case from a confession in church. Following Angela's revelations, police officially considered Stephen a suspect, lacked sufficient evidence. On July 23, 2019, construction workers discovered human remains while installing a pipeline near an intersection in a rural area, about 15 miles from the Matthews' former home. Based on DNA evidence, authorities identified the remains as Jonelle's, still dressed in the same clothes she wore when she disappeared. Forensic report listed the cause of death as a gunshot wound to the head. On September 4, 2019, Twin Falls police executed a search warrant at Stephen's apartment after he had moved to Idaho. He refused to answer investigators' questions. Authorities seized Stephen's electronic devices and found thousands of searches related to Jonelle's case, dating back long before he was considered a suspect. Prosecutors noted that Stephen had kept up with the case for years, despite having moved multiple times. On September 13, 2019, the Greeley Police Department announced that Stephen was a suspect in Jonelle's abduction and murder. Stephen denied knowing Jonelle or her family and claimed only to have heard about them after her disappearance. He stated that he was home with his wife on the night of the incident. According to Stephen, his family planned to leave town the next day and had already packed the car, contradicting Angela's account. On October 13, 2020, Stephen was indicted on charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping. According to the indictment, Stephen knew that a rake had been used to cover up tracks left in the snow at the crime scene, a detail that had never been disclosed to the public. In the trial that began on October 14, 2021, Stephen was accused of using a gun to force Jonelle out of her home before killing her. Although there was no DNA evidence, the prosecution argued that Stephen's behavior and statements incriminated him in the murder. However, the defense claimed that Stephen's obsessive interest in the case might be due to Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism, leading him to insert himself into the investigation to feel important. After a month-long trial, the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on the two serious charges against Stephen, convicting him only of providing false statements to authorities. Upon retrial, Stephen was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Jonelle on October 31, 2022. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years. The true motive behind Stephen's act may never be known, but Robert Cash, a detective involved in the case, has his theories. Robert believes that to Stephen, Jonelle was nobody. She was just collateral damage as a result of his anger against his church, one he despised. All of this was done in retribution of people who, in his mind, had wronged him, Robert explained. I think it highlights the callousness of the crime, the absolute lack of empathy or humanness in Steve, and I think that's what makes it even more tragic. She got in the way of a monster that, even in his act, had so little emotion. As far as introducing or inserting himself into the case, I just think it goes to his neurosis, his feeling that he has to be fed the information. This was his way, I think, that he was able to play the game. I think to him, this was all a game. If Stephen had said nothing and not inserted himself into the case, then we probably would still be investigating the disappearance of Jonelle Matthews. Stephen revealed himself, and it's not unusual that suspects in crimes do this. I want people to understand that it's never too late, Robert. With the right connection, with the right intentions, cases like this can be solved. Do you have any new comments about this case? Please comment below so everyone can know more information. Please like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel to follow more famous cases that we will release in the near future.